The world is changing fast. We have a new president, the rover landed on Mars, Daft Punk just broke up, they found the first yellow penguin, and Bitcoin is potentially going to take over the world. Amongst all the craziness though, there is one thing that has captured my attention. Everybody is leaving California. So it got me thinking, why? Elon Musk is moving Tesla, Joe Rogan moved to Austin, Texas, and even the Paul brothers are out. When it comes down to it, it's for one reason, money. So I decided to do some research. How much does it actually cost to live in California? All right, so this is a video I've been considering making for the last few months, and it just so happens that one of the things that was the camel that broke the straw's back for me was this.
I don't even care because I'm leaving the state. We built this brand new set and I'm out. Bro, it's getting ridiculous.
Now, if you've been paying attention to the news, you know that companies like Tesla are leaving California to set up headquarters in new up-and-coming cities like Austin, Texas, and Nashville, Tennessee. Now, this is mainly due to the restrictive business regulations and tax codes in California for corporations. So for me, well, if I was a multi-billion-dollar corporation, well, that makes sense. But how does this actually affect everyday people like you and me? Now, after seeing people like Logan and Joe Rogan speaking out on why they're leaving California, I wanted to actually look into it and see how much does it actually cost to live here. So I've spent the last 2 days researching articles, government websites, and all of the speculative changes that are expected to occur here in California over the next 5 years. So if you're someone who is considering moving to the state, or if you've been someone who actually already lives here and you're considering to jump ship, I'm going to break it all down for you here. But first, I have the smallest favor to ask of you. It would mean the world to me if you could hit that like button. It helps this video get friendly with the YouTube algorithm, and it gets served to more people who need to see it. And with that said, let's get into it. All right, so let's start with the obvious. Cost of living. So it's no secret that California is one of the most expensive states to live in, with the perfect weather, the culture, and the fact that you have access to the beach, the desert, and the mountains within a few hours. It makes sense why it's such a destination. However, when you actually think about it, the fact that there are plenty of other areas in the country that have good weather and beautiful landscapes, there must be something else to it. So it turns out when you break it down, it actually comes down to two main reasons why California costs so much more to live. So for this video, we're going to talk about the big three: Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. So the biggest factor that makes living in these cities so much more expensive is the high housing costs. So with a median price of $650,000, owning a home is out of reach for most people, which means that 2/3 of the people who live in Los Angeles, San Francisco, or San Diego actually rent instead of buy. Now, with the majority of people actually renting, supply tends to be low. The city's vacancy rate was only 5.1% in March of 2020, meaning that of the present real estate, only 5% of it was actually available to rent. So the lower the vacancy rate, the higher the prices can climb for available apartments and houses on the market. So that, combined with the fact that everybody wants to live in the cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego, also means that the prices are going to go up. Low vacancy and high demand means that the average rent in Los Angeles is high compared to the rest of the country. The average one-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles is $2,545. It's $2,998 in San Francisco, and it's $2,322 in San Diego. That is nearly double the $1,230 nationwide average. Now, the second factor that plays into this actually comes down to the building. So this has to do with the developers. So in order to build a house or an apartment complex, you actually have to deal with a few unique factors that you don't have to deal with in other states. For one, the cost of land is more expensive in California. The cost of land is about 12% of the total construction cost here compared to the 5% in other states. Next is the factor of this thing called density restrictions. So although California is one of the biggest states in the country, the majority of the population is crammed into its cities. So if you've ever been to San Fran or Los Angeles, you can tell right away that there is a lot of people here. Now, this forces the state governments to put restrictions on the development companies to the size of the apartment complexes that they're actually allowed to build. The thing is, as the size of buildings increase, developers are able to take advantage of this thing called economies of scale, which reduces the cost per apartment. So since this is limited, developers are essentially bottlenecked. Finally is the amount of development fees that California dishes out. So development companies are required to pay for street lighting, sidewalks, and things like parking. All of this combined means that it forces development companies to actually shy away from creating affordable housing projects and move towards things like luxury apartment complexes and higher priced housing to turn a profit. Now, what does that actually mean for somebody like you and me? Well, if you want to hack the cost of living, well, you have two options. One, you can choose to live outside of the cities and away from the coast in places like Vista, Riverside, and Concord, which have lower cost housing, but are close enough to the cities and the coast so you can actually access them. Or second, you could hack the cost of living by renting a place with friends and splitting the cost. This honestly comes down to basically how you want to live and things that you care about. Next up, let's chat day-to-day costs, specifically utilities, food costs, and transportation. Fortunately, California's utility costs are relatively low compared to other states. California residents pay an average of about $100 per month for utilities. This is probably because the fact that the weather is always perfect here and the need for things like heat and AC is low compared to living in a place like Maine with cold winters, or Arizona, where you need to crank the AC for 80% of the year. Now, when it comes to food, the difference is actually pretty irrelevant, especially since groceries are exempt from sales taxes in California. However, with the pursuit of more expensive lifestyles being the norm here, it's easy to fall into the trap of spending more on food by eating out of restaurants and shopping at boutique grocery stores like Whole Foods or Erewhon. But once again, that isn't something that you can't do anywhere else in the country, not just here. And of course, we cannot make this a video about California without talking about transportation, aka traffic. Now, before the pandemic and the fact that there is this new wave of people working from home, most people had to commute to work, which means that they needed a car. Or in other words, you need to outright buy a car or budget for a monthly car payment. You also need to pay for the $3.30 gas price, which happens to be about $1 above the nation's average of $2.61. That said, having a car is not much different than living in other states, and paying $1 extra for gas really doesn't make that big of a difference if you ask me. However, where you do notice the difference is in the unexpected things like car insurance. It turns out that insurance companies take into account the area that you live in when they calculate your monthly payment. So when I moved to Southern California, my monthly payment actually went up to $130 per month from the $76 per month, simply because of the higher income area that I lived in. At the end of the day though, when you break it down, the monthly living expenses like food, utilities, and transportation costs aren't much different than anywhere else, and small price increases in things like gas and food prices isn't actually anything that you can offset by being smart and not buying expensive coffees every morning. There is one elephant in the room though that we need to talk about, and with the state of the country right now, this topic is kind of like talking about religion or sex or politics, but regardless, we need to bring it up: taxes. Now, if you don't know how taxes work in the United States, there are three types of income tax: federal tax, FICA tax, and state income tax. Now, federal tax is the same across each state and is based on a variable scale and tax brackets, meaning that if you make $200,000 in a year, you're not taxed 32% on that entire $200,000. Rather, you are marginally taxed for each portion of your income. So for the first $9,876, you're taxed 12%. For the next $40,126, you are taxed 22%, and so on, which is honestly kind of weird to me, but that's just how it works. Now, state tax, on the other hand, differs state to state. Some states have a fixed state income tax, like Colorado, with a 4.63 flat tax. Some states have no income tax, like Texas and Florida. And some states have another version of that variable income tax. California is one of those states. Now, the average yearly income in California is $75,000. That would put someone in the 9.3% tax bracket, and they would be paying the state $3,664. Now, when it comes down to it, that's not that much, but still a significant amount of money, considering a good amount of your money will actually be going to the higher cost of living and paying rent. Now, however, for the higher income earners, this is where things begin to get expensive. Now, if you're making $1 million a year, you're paying the state $106,968 to live here. And let's say if you're balling and make $10 million, you're actually paying the state of California $1,303,921. This is what makes living in California so expensive, and this is why people like Joe Rogan, Logan Paul, and Elon Musk are leaving the state. After learning this, I thought, okay, that's understandable. It turns out, though, it's not just the ultra wealthy leaving, it's the middle income earners too. Now, I think we can thank COVID-19 for that. For the high income earners, it's the ability to dodge that state income tax. But for the middle class earners, it's the cost of living and new opportunity in up and coming cities. For example, you can pay $2,500 for this 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment in Santa Monica, or you can pay $2,500 for this 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house with a yard in Austin, Texas. Now, since many people are working from home and a lot of that nightlife and fun energy of living in a city like LA or San Francisco is shut down, people are choosing to bail on the California lifestyle. Finally, let's talk about the future. So it turns out that California is actually working towards raising that top marginal tax to 16.8% in this 2020 proposal called the Assembly Bill 125. Sounds very official.
FM 2187.
Turns out it was actually shut down though, but once again, that makes sense to why the wealthy are incentivized to leave the state. Now, if you want my opinion, this is what I think. When it comes down to it, it's all about quality of life and opportunity. The reality is, if you want to work in the entertainment industry, well, then you need to be here in Los Angeles. And if you want to be in the tech industry, well, you need to be in San Francisco. However, if you don't really care that much, and if you have the option to work from home, well, perhaps it's actually just better to visit. The big reality of living here in California, though, is that you actually have to literally pay to live here in the form of state income tax. And that becomes progressively more expensive as your income rises. So once again, if you make $1 million, you will essentially be paying the state just over $100,000 in taxes just to be here. Now, if you lived in a state like Texas or Florida, you would actually be able to keep that money and you can use it towards investing in the stock market, buying real estate, or you could use it towards smashing the like button. But anyway, that's it for this one, guys. I'm curious to hear what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. You can drop me one below and let me know if I should actually move to Austin, Texas. Until then, though, I'll see you guys next week. Peace.